Alright, today we will be talking about Oathbringer, and Oathbringer is the third book in the Stormlight archive. And it's also the longest book, I think. I think Wind and Truth is going to be longer. But even so, this book is definitely my least favorite. I'm going to be a little negative in the beginning. I think this book is way too long. I got to chapter 106, and I was like 1,100 pages in it. And I still wasn't at like the Sanderlanche. And for those of you who don't know, even though you probably should by now, the Sanderlanche is like the last 200 pages of these books are just crazy, balls to the wall, insane action. Now, the Sanderlanche in this book is the best of the three books. There's a lot of positives in this book. It's 1,300 pages, of course. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But I think a lot of it is very, very dragged out. And I think a lot of it is just not very interesting to me personally. As I said, all these books have flashbacks, and this book has Dalinar's flashbacks. I was super looking forward to Dalinar's flashbacks, just because the stuff with his wife has been built up for 3 books, and I was very curious to know that character and just their relationship. But it was a big disappointment in my eyes. I was just like, this isn't super interesting to me personally. But even so, we will get into all the positives and the negatives. And yeah, first we will talk about the flashbacks as a whole, just because they start right away. Dalinar's flashback is, in my opinion, very slow when it comes to character development or progression. A lot of it is very much like Dalinar being a bad person. We find out he kills a kid, but later he didn't kill that kid, and that kid eventually becomes someone who is like a threat to him, and then almost traps him, and then almost kills him, so he like burns down his entire city. We also get that through his family, where I think it's just like he doesn't care about his kids pretty much at all. He doesn't even care that Renarin exists, especially. He hates his name just because his wife was like tricked into giving him a stupid name, I guess, like the implication. She didn't know like the meaning behind certain words. And then when it comes to the wife, I was very interested to meet Evie, but I thought she was kind of a nothing character to me, and I feel bad for saying that because it's like, oh, she's a nice person. But ultimately, it's like she's miserable. There's 2 different chapters where she's like crying, and ultimately, like, she does everything that is like necessary. She ultimately doesn't really have any faults. I do like though that she tries to like adjust to Dalinar's culture, even though she struggles. Like, that is something that's a little bit more interesting. But when it comes to just Dalinar as a whole, I didn't really like this. Like, I thought these 10 or 15 chapters or however many were just kind of boring, a lot of action. I find myself skimming those action chapters a lot of the time. Now, there is an interesting juxtaposition where there's 2 chapters back to back. One is modern day, one is a flashback, and they both kind of show Dalinar struggling with politics and the temptation to go back to, fighting and being a warmonger or using force, because Taravangian in the present day appears, and he's like, we should force them to conscribe to our alliance, which we will talk about later. Now, ultimately, Dalinar causes the death of his wife because she tries to like save the city that's going to be burned down. They think she's a spy or whatever. They throw her in the prison. The prison burns down, she dies. That's an ultimate price to pay for Dalinar, but I just didn't really care when it happened, or even when he meets the Night Watcher and tries to like forget her existence. Now we'll be talking about Kaladin before he returns to Urithiru. As I said in the last book, he's going to visit his parents, but the town is destroyed. The Everstorm already hit. But even so, like, they found out ahead of time and they hid in like a shelter or something. Most of them are fine. Now, Kaladin reunites with his parents and tells them about Tien and how Tien died. They already knew that because they got his letters. And Kaladin, over the course of a couple chapters, because it's built up, finds out that he has a younger brother. They replace Tien, and it's very heartwarming. And Kaladin holds him in his arms. It's a very cute, very wholesome moment, and honestly probably the best part of the first 20 or 30 or so chapters. Then there's Roshone, who is kind of the reason why Tien is dead. Kaladin just straight up punches him. They talk about politics and stuff, and Kaladin is trying to get them to use their resources better and get them to go to Urithiru and things of that nature. But Roshone is hesitant to listen to anything Kaladin has to say until Kaladin summons a Shard Blade. Now when you summon a Shard Blade, you're kind of the highest ranking person in the room, just because there's so few of them. And if you have one, that means you earned it. And so everyone's shocked, and it's awesome because Roshone is just kind of put in his place. He's humbled a little bit more. then Kaladin starts flying and shows them his powers, and they're even more blown away. And then Kaladin also meets with his love interest from his flashbacks, and there's a very weird thing where she's very okay with being married to Roshon, even though Roshon is like twice her age. I think that's a little weird, but maybe that'll be developed on later as like a bad thing. I don't know. And she is very snooty to Kaladin too, until she sees that Dalinar and Navani actually respond to Kaladin's messages, and she's very impressed with that. But even so, I think she's kind of like a tragic character who's very like, as a child she's very like happy and go lucky, but then as an adult she's just kind of like a terrible person. It was fed into a terrible situation where she had to marry someone twice her age. Now, I do have a quick theory, because around this time, Syl kind of flat out mentions that she wants to be a mom, which I think is interesting, because she's also the daughter of the Stormfather, who's, like, kind of in charge of the high storms. It's like, will she replace him one day? And, like, will she have her own Spren children? I think that's plausible. Then there's another set of few chapters that are kind of boring. I mean, there's some interesting stuff going on where Kaladin gets, like, captured by Voidbringers, and he finds out they're just like regular people playing games, and these people were like Parshmen. And we talked about how like they were like their perspectives, because I said Parshmen were people who were just kind of mindless. They were slaves. They just did as they were told. They couldn't hesitate or anything. We see a story where one of them, his wife was sold, and he was like aware that his wife was sold to like a different family, I guess, but he couldn't like say anything about it just because he like physically couldn't, but he was like aware of it happening, which I think is interesting. Is like, how do they have like wives? I guess they're like forced to like marry and have kids. There's also a point where Kaladin straight up talks to the Stormfather, which I think is like cool but also a little weird, just because it kind of demystifies him, because like in book 1 we see him as a face and he's this like mysterious figure, but ultimately it's like now anyone can just kind of talk to him. Shallan probably could if she really wanted to. It's kind of a nitpick, but even so. He eventually goes back to Urithiru, and he finds Haber, who had his legs cut by Seth, and he's starting to walk again. It's a very nice like feel-good chapter. There's also like Kaladin versus Yasna. She wants to get rid of all the Parshendi and all the Parshmen, and Kaladin with his experience is like, no, we should try to save them. And I really want more of a back and forth between those two characters. I hope they interact more in the coming books, because they didn't really interact more in this book at all. They have like some respect for each other again, and they're never really in like the same room. And another like Moash side plot, which I don't really think is interesting. At the end of the last book, he went with his secret organization to meet with Taravangian, and they all immediately die, which I think is really weird. I was wondering if like Brandon Sanderson ever spoke on that, because it seemed like he had like an idea for Moash and then changed it. It was just like, I'll kill all these people and have Moash be under the Parshendi group for this book, so he can be at the palace and get his revenge later. I thought it was just kind of messy. Alright, now we have Shallan and her arc in this book before the palace invasion and stuff. Kind of boring, kind of slow. She's helping Adolin investigate these murders, because Sadeas died. Adolin didn't tell anyone that he killed Sadeas. And another murder happens that's very, very similar to the murder of Sadeas. And they have to investigate that. And Shallan also creates a new personality to help her fight, which I think is like kind of like shown as cool, but also like an obvious like, no, this isn't supposed to be cool, this is weird, and she's kind of tearing herself apart a little bit. Mraize, the leader of the Ghostbloods, is kind of guarding Sadeas' wife, which could have been interesting, but nothing really comes of it in this book. Now in the last book, I was hoping for some more dramatic payoffs with Shallan finding out that Kaladin is the one that killed her brother, in fact, but nothing really happens, because in this book, Shallan eventually tells Adolin the story of her brother and her past, and realizes that, oh, Kaladin killed your brother. And she doesn't really... that never really gets brought up, like, ever, in this entire book. And I think that's just another wasted opportunity. And another wasted opportunity is Yasna returning. So when Yasna returns, it happens off-screen. We are told that Navani and her have a deeply emotional reunion. But, like, we don't see Alucard's perspective, Navani's perspective, Dalinar's perspective. It's just she's back. And I was also hoping we would get, like, a side story with Wit and her traveling around from place to place. But that doesn't really happen, it's just completely skipped, because I guess Yasna learns some information about the recreants, and we, as the audience, can't know what that is yet. But even so, all that stuff is off-screen. I think it would have been very cool if some of that was on-screen, or if there were some consequences to Shallan learning about Kaladin killing her brother. We had issues with this in the last book, where people just kind of find out that Yasna died off-screen, and people in Kaladin and Amarim don't really talk at all during the first portion of the second book. I feel like this is a little wasted opportunity. Now, right before Yasna appears at the castle, Shallan finds the murderer, and it's an unmade. Shallan is able to fight it with her Stormlight, and just kind of like her memories ward it off. Like, whatever Shallan does, it retreats, and Shallan's put in the hospital until Yasna returns. When Yasna returns, Yasna, compliments Shallan in all that she's done, but still orders her around and still calls her a ward, and Shallan kind of likes it, but she kind of also hates it. So that's like a reason why she wants to go to the palace with Kaladin later, is because, or she wants to go to Alethkar with Kaladin later, because she wants to get away from Yasna, and it's just her running away again, which is just another different perspective on her running away from different scenarios, such as creating these alternate personas like Radiant and like Veil. And another small thing with Shallan is that she defends Renarin from these other women that are making fun of him, which is very cool because it's just most authors would just focus on Adolin and Shallan, but Adolin has a younger brother, so it's good that that relationship between Renarin and Shallan is being developed at least a little bit. Hopefully there's more of that. There's nothing more of that in this book, at least. Modern day Dalinar, a lot of his stuff is very focused on politics in this book, and getting different people to agree to his alliance to stop the Voidbringers. Taravangian agrees to join him right away, which we know is odd, because Taravangian is the antagonist, or one of the major antagonists. But no one knows that yet. And Elhokar secretly makes Dalinar the king of Urithiru, because Elhokar, he will rule Alethkar, so he can't rule both countries very well, so he won't rule either place very well. He just names Dalinar the king of Urithiru, because he's basically in charge anyways. And another thing, early in the book, Dalinar and Navani get married very quickly, and the Stormfather officiates, which I think is just a very funny, cool little gimmick that Dalinar can just do, and he does it. He uses the Stormfather because Navani was his brother's wife before the brother died, and now he's marrying her, so a lot of people don't approve. But if the Stormfather approves, then no one can say anything about it. It's clever, it's funny, it's very interesting. It's something that can only happen in a book like this. Dalinar is now exploring these visions. He's going to now talk to the Stormfather, and the Stormfather can put him in these visions, and he can explore them. However, the Stormfather also says he can put other people in these visions as well, as long as a high storm is around them. So he puts the other political leaders in these visions so that they will believe him. Then a gal from another country joins his alliance. Then they infiltrate Alethkar. Shallan gets them into the city, and these early chapters are very, very focused on Shallan. Shallan has a lot of conversations with Hoid about how old he is, and how he is so much older than even the heralds. And she looks into his eyes, she sees the mountains changing and rivers drying up and stuff like that. That's a very cool display of Hoid's character, and just a good build-up for whatever story we may get out of him one day. Now these early chapters are very focused on Shallan. Not super consistently good, but usually pretty if it's Shallan and Hoid, it's very good. If it's Shallan by herself, then not as much. Then there's the chapters with Kaladin and Azur and the Wall Guard, and those are very boring, very, very slow. But again, with the Voidbringers from earlier, they are very necessary. And there's chapter 78, where it's another chapter in Words of Radiance, where Kaladin and Shallan have back and forth POVs. They're both infiltrating different places. Shallan's infiltrating a cult, while Kaladin questions Azur. And they're both trying to get information out of different people, but otherwise there's not a lot of character work going on in Words of Radiance, so I don't know why this chapter was structured this way. And in chapter 82, we get another talk with Hoid and Shallan about how the world is cruel, but that doesn't mean that like Shallan is necessarily a bad person for reacting poorly in a cruel world. It's probably one of the best chapters of this whole section. And they infiltrate the palace, and Shallan fights the Unmade, which is interesting because the Unmade says it's not with Odium, says that it's like betrayed Odium. There's a lot of tension with like, should Shallan believe her or not? There's a lot of trust and lies being said, and which is like Shallan's whole arc. And with Kaladin, we have the Voidbringers that he talked about, that he met, fighting the Wall Guard that he met, and they're killing each other. So all those boring chapters have a payoff, which is nice. But maybe it was a little stretched out, but it definitely needed to have a stronger impact, so maybe it was fine. It will probably be better on reread anyways. And then Shallan uses the Oathgate to get them to escape. Elhokar dies to Moash, and I'm assuming that's why everyone hates Moash. And I don't like him either at this point, just because his chapters are mainly boring. He can just kind of showed up out of nowhere to kill Elhokar, and Kaladin kind of failed this book. This is like Kaladin's first major loss, outside of all the minor losses he experienced in the first couple books. And Adolin kind of feels guilty for like abandoning his cousin and pulling Kaladin away to the Oathgate, even though it was like a necessary action. There's still some good inner conflict there. Then we get into Shadesmar, and this is my least favorite part of the book, even though I've been complaining about this book more than the other books. It's very world building heavy, and usually I would love that, but it's just not interesting to me. It's just like our world, but with Spren. But then like some of just the locations are inverse, so like in the real world where there would be an ocean, there would be land in Shadesmar, and in Shadesmar where there's an ocean, there would be land in the real world, and that's just not enough for me to like find it awesome, you know? Even in the first two books when it was very mysterious, I liked it a lot more, but once we unveil everything, it just didn't. It just seemed too much like the real world for me to like get in there. It kind of feels like the movie Elementals, where like the entire city is just a normal city with elemental people in it, as opposed to a city for elemental people. But there's still some good character moments in here. We get Adolin feeling useless, and he gets a nice moment with Shallan, and we find out that Azur is pretty much Vienna. Like Nightblood mentions Vienna in one chapter. And the next chapter is very Azur focused, so it's obviously, her from Warbreaker, so that's awesome. But then she leaves. This is kind of where I got burnt out, though. I was 106 chapters in the book, I think more than 1,100 pages in, and I still didn't get to that Sanderlanch that, everyone talks about. And I was just kind of hoping to get there at this point, especially when some of the cliffhangers for the chapters weren't intriguing, like, oh no, the Fused are showing up again. And we fought the Fused several times already. Even though I get it, like, Kaladin in this situation is the only one that can really handle them. Me personally, when it's like no one's died really in these books, and the cliffhanger is a new battle is going to happen, I don't really care then. And then, of course, Adolin also mentions to Shallan that he did kill Sadeas. And, again, so there's like a lack of tension where it's just like, there could have been some good drama here, but no. Now I get why Shallan doesn't really care, like she killed her own parents. But hopefully when Dalinar finds out, there's some more tension there. Then we get to the Sanderlanch. I think it opens with like another vision where Odium kind of attacks the Stormfather, and the Stormfather cries, which is interesting just because like the Stormfather is this like heavenly figure. Then we get the meeting where we find out that Taravangian's plan is to like leak information on stuff about Dalinar, like him being the king of Urithiru, which he didn't tell the other leaders, and the fact that all humans are the Voidbringers, like we came from a different planet, and we somehow got here, and the Fused are like the natural inhabitants of this planet. Which causes, tension, just because Dalinar is kind of at an all-time low, now not a lot of people trust him in his alliance. But Thaylen City is attacked, so Finn and Dalinar, and most of the people just go there to defend it, because it is one of the most important cities. And when Amaram and his army go, they get corrupted by Odium's Spren. We also find out that the Thrill is like a Spren itself, which I'm kind of mixed on, because it does kind of take away from Dalinar's whole warmongering arc, because like he was a warmonger, but it's partially because of this like creature. We also find out that Renarin's spren is one of Odium's, so there's some tension there, where it's like, is he really a Knight's Radiant? Then Odium summons a Thunderclass, which is a giant stone monster that destroys one of the walls. I seriously thought, because Navani and Finn were on the walls, I thought they would be dead. But no, they're perfectly fine. And in this moment, because of all these lows, I just thought that Dalinar would actually die here, just kind of like the last book. Because like his arc is mainly done, we have his flashback. This would be the perfect time for him to die, or become Odium's champion. But no, none of those things happen. But Dalinar does give a very good speech about his Odium offers him a chance to kind of forget his pain. And Dalinar's like, no, you can't have my pain. This is my pain. I killed those kids. I killed my wife. All these things. And he accepts what he did, and he won't let Odium coddle him. He won't let him ease that pain. He wants to live with that pain. And that's probably one of the best moments in all three of these books. And afterwards, he does something called the Unity, which I feel like feels like a Deus Ex Machina a little bit, just because it brings the people from Shadesmar in, and there's these moments that line up where like all the characters show up in one place. It is built up better than most things I watch or read, but it does feel a little cheap when it comes to the people who are stuck in Shadesmar, because they had no way of getting out of there. When it comes to Yasna and Renarin, there was a plot line where Yasna talks about how empires fall from within, and that even talks about like the Alliance, how people were distrusting Dalinar. But also because Renarin had a Odium spren. Renarin could like see visions, that's like one of his powers, and he saw Yasna killing him. But when the time comes, Yasna does not kill him. She hugs him, and then like takes his hand, and they go to the battlefield, because they're cousins, they're family, and Yasna's highest priority is her family. Which is a very good character dynamic that I was not expecting that we would get. There's some nice jumping around, as I said, where we get POVs from the people in Shadesmar, Dalinar, Navani, even Talm and Ash, who are the OG heralds, because Ash is a character that's been kind of mainly in the interludes, and she's found Talm. And Talm, as I said in a previous video, and as I've said previously, Talm is kind of not there mentally, but she still tries to talk with him. And then Seth is also there with Lift, and they all show up. And with Dalinar's Unity, he brings the people in Shadesmar in, and everyone's together. And even Talm, for some reason, gets his memories back during this time. And Ash wants Talm to hate her because of what the Heralds did, I guess. It takes a lot to explain, but if you read the book, you already know. But she wants him to hate him. But Talm actually is like, no, I don't hate you, because what you did to me gave humanity a fighting chance. And that's just another really good character moment, even though I know nothing about this character. He's only shown up a handful of times. But it's a very, good showing of self-sacrifice. It also makes Ash more of an interesting character again, even though we barely know anything about her. And when everyone is together, they all split off and deal with these armies. Yasna and Shelyn have a good moment together where they just kind of acknowledge each other and how much they've grown, and there's a sign of respect there. Kaladin and Amaram fight, and it's a very long... I know a lot of people like this fight, but I just thought it dragged on a little too long. I won't complain too much about it because it's been built up for 3 books now. And all of a sudden, Rock kills Amaram, and I thought that was kind of out of nowhere. I didn't really see as to why Rock should have killed Amaram. I get it, Rock is a very pacifist character, and then killing somebody is a big deal, especially for his culture, and this is going to cause some consequences for later books, I'm assuming. But I just was like, what's his connection to Amaram? It probably should have been Kaladin, but it's not a big deal, more of an nitpick. So once Dalinar defeats the Thrill, and Kaladin meets Amaram, and once Adolin and Renarin meet the Thunderclass, once Shalyn and Yasna defeat the armies, and then Odium retreats, and then Adolin and Shalyn get married at the end. We don't really see the marriage, we just kind of see the build up to it. Shalyn is reunited with her brothers finally after 3 books. And that's where the book pretty much leaves off. There's an epilogue with Hoyd, and he gets Elhokar's spren, so that confirms that yes, he was supposed to be a Knight's Radiant. Those shadows that he saw were just a spren that was attaching itself to him. but he died before he could fully become a Knights Radiant, and he died before he could say the oaths, even though he was very close to saying the oaths before Moash killed him. So that's just another layer of tragedy on top of his death already. But even so, when Elhokar dies, like, I don't remember, like, seeing Navani's reaction. It's all off screen. And we get Adolin's guilt with it, but, like, it just seems so, like, washed over. Overall, in this point of the series, we get to the point where everyone has powers except Adolin, and it's mostly like, there's no normal people anymore. Maybe except Navani's, but she's a minor character, so we'll see what happens in future books. And we are getting a lot more characterization for Bridge 4, which I like, because I feel like in Book 2 there really wasn't that much, and in this book they have more chapters. So even though I didn't really seem to like this book, I still like this book. It's just not as good as Wave Kings or Words of Radiance by any means. But what did you like about this book? Did you like this book at all? Let me know. Is this like your least favorite one? Let me know if I got anything wrong, because it's been like maybe 2 weeks now since I've read this book, so things are a little fuzzy. And next week I will be reviewing Rhythm of War, since I'm mostly already done with that.